All right, what's going on, everybody? Thank you for joining for me for another WTH Wednesday, where I go through all the things that are happening in our world right now, which often leaves us with the expression or thought, or at least feeling of what the hell is going on. So we're here, or I'm here, we though, because this is an interactive experience, here to talk about what the hell is going on in the news. So I'm going to get into this really quickly. Pay attention to the ticker on the bottom of the screen, which is telling you, of course, to join me here every Wednesday. And while you're here, don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube page. You can expect a lot of great content. I post all this politics stuff here, my stuff on CNN, just wherever I am, wherever I be, wherever I happen to post up. I, make sure that you all have access to that particular content. So thank you for joining me once again. I have a great show today lined up. Omar Kelly, my homie, who is the NFL columnist for the Miami Herald, he's going to join me. We're going to talk about the NFL draft, in particular, all this hate for Shedeur Sanders, because some new hate dropped today from, of course, an anonymous NFL assistant who had some very sharp criticisms of Shedeur, his behavior, his demeanor, and even his play. And then later on, if you all haven't seen Sinners, let me tell you, first of all, get your life, get all of your life, your entire life. Go see this movie. It is the best movie I've seen this year. I am not a horror person. It's usually not my genre, not because I'm scared. It's just like not my thing. But this movie was everything. It's everything everybody said it is. And so later on in this hour, I'm going to have my girl, my best friend, Kelley Carter, senior entertainment critic for ABC and also ESPN. She's going to join me as we break down this movie, what it means for Ryan Coogler's career, and even some of the hate and the framing that Sinners has been receiving from the press. And, along those lines, don't forget that this is interactive. So I'm going to be flashing up you guys' comments, answering your questions, all of that. So stay involved during this time. But off top, y'all already know what I got to talk about. Shannon Sharpe. When this story first came out that he was being accused of a sexual assault, I'm not going to lie. Like I didn't dismiss it because I dismiss serious allegations or anything. But, to be honest, with all the news and things that we're dealing with now, it's like a lot of stuff that's going on. So I kind of didn't pay attention. And as we've seen, hour by hour, there has been something new and something different, new audio tapes. I mean, the woman who is accusing him of sexual misconduct, sexual assault, it's like she's dropping a mixtape of some embarrassing moments, for him, for them combined, depending on how you view it. And so it's just been crazy to see how this story has unfolded. And Shannon himself, he has addressed these allegations. So before I get further into what my thoughts are, I'm going to play for you Shannon addressing these allegations, which he did the other day.
Friends, supporters, and colleagues, I want to speak to you directly and from the heart. This is a shakedown. I'm going to be open, transparent, and defend myself because this isn't right. This is all being orchestrated by Tony Buzbee, who has targeted Jay-Z. Tony Buzbee targets black men, and I believe he's going to release a 30-second clip of a sex tape that tries to make me look guilty and play into every stereotype you could possibly imagine. That video should actually be 10 minutes or so. Hey, Tony, instead of releasing your edit, put the whole video out. I don't have it, or I would myself. You know what happened, and you're trying to manipulate the media. The encounter in question took place during the day at her invitation, and now that appears to be a deliberate setup, coordinated by Gabby, also known as Carly on OnlyFans. Gabby and Tony Buzbee want $50 million. What they're getting is sued for defamation and trying to take me down. My career is all about real talk and honesty. I know my family and fans know exactly what this is about. And I'm going to be out there telling you whatever I need to say, just like I always do. I love all you guys. Thanks.
All right, that was Shannon addressing these allegations that have been made against him by this young woman. And, that included, of course, the release of her name. She is no longer Jane Doe at this point. Everybody pretty much knows who she is. And let me just say that this is a really uncomfortable thing to watch. I know Shannon, and I don't pretend to be his best friend, but I know him. I've known him for years. I remember before he got on at Fox, and he had the show with Skip Bayless, he came through ESPN and was sort of going through what is a little bit of a tryout process there, appearing on different shows. The executives were taking a look at him. And so, he and I got a chance to be able to have conversations and talk. And, me and other people, me and actually Carrie Champion, we went to dinner with Shannon as we sort of, we're just trying to give him our insight into how ESPN worked, just kicking it and just, kind of chopping it up. So I don't pretend that I know Shannon super well. I mean, from what I've seen and what I've experienced, he's always been a very affable person, real cool. Last time I saw him was at the Super Bowl. I think it was in Vegas. Yeah, I saw him at the Super Bowl in Vegas last year, and it was all love. And so I have a lot of respect for how he's been able to really reshape his broadcasting career, especially after what happened at Fox. But my experience with Shannon is kind of irrelevant. I don't know what happened. I don't know anything else beyond the things that you all know. But what I do know is how ESPN operates in moments of crisis. And it would seem to me that if I had to guess, that Shannon is probably about to go in timeout. That doesn't mean he's going to get fired. That doesn't mean that they're going to tear up his contract. But at the very least, knowing how ESPN works and my experience in being there is that they are looking at all of this and really weighing this against their brand as a company, because it's not just ESPN, it's also Disney, the brand of one of their most popular shows, that being First Take, and what they've been able to build there. And, they're probably wondering, is this worth it? And that's kind of how they think, as any business would during this moment, is that whether you believe in his guilt, innocence, whatever, for them, that part is irrelevant. When it comes to innocent and proven guilty, when it comes to your employer, they don't need that. They don't need to know about your guilt or innocence. All they need to know is this embarrassing the brand? Is this embarrassing the company? And if the answer is yes, then that could lead to a consequence. Again, doesn't matter what happens in the court of law, doesn't matter what happens in a civil suit. What matters to them is, how is this impacting their brand? And I have to say right now, it's not a good look. It's just not a good look. And that's probably putting it really mildly, to say that it's not a good look, because you have someone who is a top tier talent, who's been able to add a lot of great things to one of their most popular shows, and in the eyes of the public, his reputation has been damaged. And I mean, I know a lot of people have a lot of opinions about whether or not somebody his age should be even dating somebody of that age, or whatever you call what they did. But between these audio clips, these text messages, and that was that was another thing about all this that I was honestly surprised. I'm not surprised he defended himself, because when you when you accuse a man, or really anybody, of something that's this nefarious, of sexual assault, something that's very, very serious, when you make that kind of accusation, and if you feel like you haven't done it, I think there's a reasonable expectation from most people that you would defend your name and defend your reputation, your credibility, to the utmost degree, if you feel like you really didn't do this. And so I'm not surprised that there was some kind of response, but I have to say, the response was surprising on a number of levels. We, in that response, got a lot of information that was not known. And, the fact that we're talking, suddenly we know this young lady's name, then we find out it's OnlyFans, then we find out her age, then this thing has taken on a complete life of its own. And so, and then we find out it might be some kind of sex tape coming. I mean, again, all of this makes me, wildly uncomfortable as I'm watching all of this, unfold. And obviously we all remember the moment where Shannon, of course, he had that unfortunate incident, with him accidentally going live while he was doing his thing, the whole Michelle episode. And, he was mostly self-deprecating about it. And I got that. But even with that, even the t-shirts and all that kind of thing, I was a little uncomfortable. I was like, I get it. We can sometimes make fun of ourselves, even in what's an embarrassing moment. But it is to make t-shirts about that. I was like, to each his own, couldn't be me. That's all I'm going to say. To each his own, but couldn't be me. So now we fast forward and there's another issue, involving, something to do with his personal life. And for a network, that all looks bad, and especially given the fact that, Shannon is in his mid 50s. This is not somebody young or new to the business. This is somebody who lived an entire NFL career, as one of the greatest tight ends ever. So it's not like he's not used to the spotlight. It ain't like he ain't used to having a lot of women that are around and available. He is used to this game. And so I think that's the other part of this that is super alarming to people about how something like this could happen to somebody that at this stage in their career, in their life, that you would assume would have a lot more common sense. And, naturally, let's just call it what it is. Again, sexual assault allegations are very serious. But I think the moment that people saw the name Tony Busby, we know what his reputation has been. We see this, and then all of a sudden, it is giving the appearance that there is a combination of some level of extortion that's going on here. And even if that's the case, if we want to be fair about it, is that two things can be happening at the same time. This can definitely be a shakedown. And there also is something inappropriate that could have happened. So we just don't know, and there's not enough information. But at any rate, I'm going to have a little bit more on this later because I have a lot more thoughts to get to, about it. But it's just, in a way, it's just really at this point, it's just very cringeworthy. It's very uncomfortable. And I don't know about y'all, but at this point, I won't out the group chat. Like, it's like Ice Cube and Boys in the Hood. Or rather, I should say Trey and Boys in the Hood. Remember, they was rolling around trying to get revenge for the guys that shot Ricky. Let me out, though. That's why I am. Don't let me out. That's why I am with all of this. But anyway, I want to make a pivot here. As you all know, tomorrow, the NFL draft is here. One of the best times of years, especially if you are a team that's looking for that hope beyond hope, that this could be your time, that this is your Super Bowl if you didn't make the playoffs, if you are the fan of a shitty franchise. But here to break all of this down is my good friend, Omar Kelly, who is the NFL columnist for the Miami Herald, a football guru, a savant, and we're going to talk about the NFL draft right now. All right. Omar, welcome. Thank you for joining me for WTH Wednesday.
Absolutely. It is my honor and pleasure, and happy to see you on my airwaves and on any kind of platform, Jemele.
Okay. I mean, would you like to contribute anything to this Shannon Sharpe conversation?
There's a lot. I hear your perspective. My whole thing is the whole choking situations. I'm thinking to myself, like, yeah. Some people like to be choked now.
Now, let's just, for people in the comment section, let's just get there. Let's just add a little levity to this. Like, we know it's some serious accusations that are levied. This is the best way I can say this is what in the Django is going on? That's all I want to know. It's like, what in the Django is going on?
Whenever it's a Tony Busby kind of situation, we kind of can assume and understand what in the Django is going to go on, where if a certain amount of money is put on the table, then the allegations will somehow seemingly disappear. Now, I'm reading the text, I'm hearing the conversations, I'm looking at the OnlyFans account, I'm looking at the Instagram account. I'm like, yes, another part of the uncomfortable part of this conversation is the 52-year-old with the 20-year-old.
Right.
And it's not illegal.
It's not.
It's not wise, but right. It's also
it's in that category of you are legally right, but are you morally right? I don't know, or are you common sense right to do this?
And on Club Shay Shay, he basically interrogated some of his guests about dating younger women, and here he is dating a woman 30 years younger than him, or I don't even know if we can say dating.
Yeah, I mean, they what do they call it? I wouldn't even call it a situation. They dealing with each other. That's what this is. They are dealing with each other.
They're entertaining each other.
They're entertaining each other. That's a brilliant way to put this. All right, we don't want to get too down the rabbit hole with that. Of course, I had you on to talk about the NFL draft, and I'm sure that you probably saw this news story, this nugget that broke just today. And it's amazing how the timing of these, right?
Oh, of course.
The timing of these, right, Omar, it's always interesting. Now, this is from, this was a report to NFL Media. I believe it was Tom Pelissero.
NFL Network.
Oh, NFL Network. I'm sorry.
Not just NFL Media.
Yes.
One of the voices of the NFL.
Yes, NFL Network.
For them one of the voices of a network that the father once worked with.
Correct.
And
absolutely,
I have the greatest amount of respect for Tom, but for him.
But wait, real quick, Omar, before I ask what your thoughts are on, let me just real quickly just inform the people, just so they know what happened. It was a veteran NFL assistant coach who supposedly told this to Tom Pelissero anonymously. Of course, he said this about Shedeur. He said Shedeur gave the worst formal interview I've ever been in my life. That's what he said about this interview. Or it wasn't, it was, it's the NFL assistant coach, as I said. He went on to say he's so entitled. He takes unnecessary sacks. He never plays on time. He has horrible body language. He blames teammates. But the biggest thing is he's not that good. Now, this is on top of another veteran AFC executive who said about their interview with Shedeur Sanders, quote, didn't go great. And now we also alternately find out that Shedeur Sanders apparently had a party and none of his teammates showed up. So it's gone from, it's a whole thing. So it's gone from.
We got the Josh Rosen reputation now where he threw a party and none of his teammates showed up.
Supposedly none of his teammates came. So it's gone from celebrating Shedeur, the type of season he has, the type of player. And he's always faced some level of hate at every level. Like this, the hate is kind of not new, but it just keeps getting more pronounced. And it feels like it's ballooning and getting bigger.
It's draft day.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you, Omar.
Let me make this point to you. And I honestly said this probably a year ago this time when one of my insiders told me that Shedeur is probably going to be a first-round quarterback. I have seen him throw in person, and that's not a top shelf arm. The arm is the number one thing that I'm going to say. He has a baseline NFL arm. It's just enough.
Right.
Now, Johnny Manziel had just enough. Baker Mayfield had just enough. So this is no knock on him. It's good enough to be in the first round. Mm-hmm. But he's not an upper echelon talent. But you know what he is? He's the name that will drive the ratings of this draft for hours, if not days. And with Cam Ward going number one, they have nothing else to talk about. And these major networks don't believe that anybody else can move the needle of the draft outside of quarterback ratings.
So in your mind, the Shedeur Sanders hate that we're seeing is just is it just typical kind of NFL bullshit?
Yeah, it's a byproduct of this process. They go through this draft process, and it's about finding the warts, highlighting the warts. And at this point, 48 hours before the draft, making sure that a player that you want falls to you. Okay. And the thing about Shedeur is, I think New Orleans is a great opportunity for him. I don't think the Giants are going to take him because I don't think he has the arm to play in the Meadowlands. So then we get to New Orleans, a dome situation. Drew Brees didn't have the greatest of arm. He would probably be a great fit in New Orleans. And then we have Pittsburgh, which is a great organization led by Mike Tomlin, who his father probably wants him to play for. Keep in mind that Deion Sanders very, very early in the process was basically saying, we don't want him to play for just any team or just any organization. We want him to go into the right situation, the right organization. And I've always said this, Shedeur and that family, they don't need money. What they need is the right platform. And the right platform is the Pittsburgh Steelers. So somehow having him fall to 18 would benefit them because he would be put in a position to win right away with a good team, and then that will lead to $250 to $300 million.
So, how much of this is about his father? Is about Deion?
I think a ton of it is because.
But why though? I mean, I guess I'm a little confused by that because it seemed like Deion was somebody who was beloved, who was respected.
Yeah.
So I would have thought that having a father like him would have been additive.
He's also not naive. He also knows the game. He can if he questions something about Shedeur on a Tuesday during his Colorado press conference, then you've got to address it as the head coach on Wednesday. Or let's say he's drafted by the Giants. Next thing you know, Dabo is fired, and who are you proposing to be the coach of Shedeur Sanders with the New York Giants? It's gonna be his father. I'm surprised his father wasn't more seriously considering the Dallas job. His father is going to be a cloud over his career, probably his entire career, and it's only because his father is not naive or ignorant enough to, people are terrified of the fact that he knows what he's talking about. His father knows what he's talking about. So do you want to have to answer questions to Deion Sanders?
No, you probably don't. And maybe that's what part of this is about, is that they know that his dad knows the game. So they know they're not going to be able to just run any game on him or this family. And so maybe that's gotten them, maybe that's part of the reason why there's a little more trepidation by the NFL brass about whether or not whether or not this is somebody that should be considered an elite talent in this draft. Now, we've heard repeatedly already that this is a draft that's a little light when it comes to franchise quarterback type of talent.
Yeah.
Is there a quarterback in this draft that you feel like could change a franchise?
There are probably three. Milroe from Alabama, McCord. I like McCord from Syracuse. And then Paxton, I think it's Dart. The kid from Ole Miss. Mm-hmm. He's got talent. He just probably needs to be developed a little bit. So they're probably about three quarterbacks. They'll probably be taken in the second round or early the fourth round in terms of McCord. But here's the thing. Every year there is a quarterback. You can call it a weak draft. They called it a weak draft when Brock Purdy came out. He was the final pick, and right now he's in line to make a $50 million a year contract. To me, it's about, it was a weak draft when Dak Prescott got selected in the fourth round. Lamar Jackson was the last pick, and people who are very smart in football, like Bill Polian, said he should be a receiver, not a quarterback. What I've realized is these teams really don't know what they're talking about a lot of times when it comes to yeah, they're guessing just as much as the general public is. And really what it comes down to, in my opinion, is getting with the right organization like a Jalen Hurts did or Lamar Jackson did, getting the right coaching and not being rushed out there on the field. Patrick Mahomes didn't play his whole whole rookie season. And I think Shedeur, that would be a good situation for Shedeur in terms of not being in a situation where you're forced onto the field playing earlier than you should. But it'll be interesting. He's a storyline in this draft. You're going to hear Shedeur for probably the next 24 hours.
So to that end, let me ask you about another name that is considered, if we had a hierarchy of who's the quarterback that is considered to be sort of the prize. It seems like that's Cam Ward. What's your take on him?
Cam Ward, he's got a moxie to him. He's got a presence. He throws with a lot of velocity, side-on throws, scrambling ability. He's got that intangible. I live in Miami. I watch the University of Miami. He rose that poor, sad franchise that was once atop the mountain. He rose them back to the level of respectability. And I believe that he could be the one it player in this draft. I think he's a future Pro Bowler. And Tennessee Titans, they've had a bounty of offers, and they've decided, we're not going to trade the pick. So clearly they agree that Cam Ward is that difference maker.
Now, if Shedeur is the story of the draft, is the player of the draft perhaps Travis Hunter?
What's interesting? This is a first of many for us, because I don't think you've ever seen a situation where a player is the number one wide receiver in the draft and also the number one cornerback in the draft.
Yeah.
And I really don't know how that's going to pan out, because he's told people, if you do not want to play me at both, do not select me, because we are also seeing a very entitled era of athletes in this generation. I mean, they're telling you we're not running on 40, we're not bench pressing 225 pounds. What do I need to do? Hunter, he never did any combine workouts.
Right.
He's like, you got film. And right now with this NIL money and this era, and I talk to executives about it a lot, this is the entitlement era of athletes, and you're just going to have to deal with it, and you're going to have to figure out how to coach these guys. And if you draft him and you do not intend to play him two ways, you're probably making a mistake.
So, I mean, Omar, you've covered the NFL for a while. I mean, like, can he really be, in today's NFL, can he really be a full-time two-way player?
I think if he is a full-time slot receiver and a full-time nickel cornerback, maybe it can happen. Mm-hmm. In terms of him being out there on third down packages on both sides of the ball and maybe select plays, but you can't be a shadow or a boundary and the work that you have to exert to do that, and then be a starting flanker. And how are you going to do the playbook? How are you going to practice both sides? Yes, you don't have to really practice cornerback because it's we in man and we in zone. I'm on the boundary, or I have the nickel position, and basically it's an option route. So I don't think he has to necessarily attend practices from a defensive standpoint, but to learn a whole offensive playbook, that's a little bit of a stretch for me. But if anybody's going to be able to do it, it's him. I remember I covered the University of Miami when Devin Hester was basically a two-way player at the University of Miami. Dynamic talent, dynamic athlete. You see him in the Hall of Fame. He became a legendary returner. But you know what, Jemele? He couldn't learn offense. And I remember they put him in offensive packages for a Peach Bowl. They gave him 7 plays. And I remember one of the coaches told me the first of the 7 plays, he runs it the wrong way. And so, I really just don't know if there's enough time in the week for a guy to learn both packages.
But what about from a physical standpoint? Because, like, I know that the demands on your body in the NFL are different. And by all accounts, Travis Hunter takes care of his body exceptionally well. Like he already is treating it like he is a professional and has been for some time, but just physically, could he hold up and do this?
No, not a chance. I don't even think the greatest cornerbacks can hold up and play 1,000 snaps a season. So to imagine doing Justin Jefferson's load and then doing Jalen Ramsey's load, it's not a possibility in my mind. I think maybe select situations, maybe goal line, red zone, critical third downs. Yeah, you come in on offense or you come in on defense, but you got to pick a side. And to be honest with you, I'm pretty sure he's going to pick wide receiver because there's more money at wide receiver as opposed to at cornerback. But the easiest position, the one thing that I've always learned from NFL coaches is you want to give rookies a small plate of food so that they can eat it all and have success with it. And then you put more on the plate. You don't just want to go and give him a Thanksgiving Day feast and put it right in front of him and say, here, eat it all. So I'm dying to see how he handles all of this, but he's very intent on being the first in NFL history to do this. And what he showed you at Colorado is who's to say he can't?
I just don't even know, how do you play a player? How do you pay a player that is playing on both sides? Like what does that money look like?
He'll clearly want to be the highest paid defender and the highest paid receiver. That I can simplify that for you if he warrants that.
Okay.
Right now everybody just wants to get as close to QB money as possible, and so if he has that level of impact, I think he does have a chance. But I honestly I don't know how he cares for his body, but I don't see an NFL body. I don't see a man's body, because I've looked at, I'm sorry, you can't put him up against Brandon Marshall and some of these and Mike Evans and think that you're going to just lock them down, because those you have not played that player in college. You have not.
Yeah, in general, I think a lot of people, especially we're talking about the first day here of the NFL draft. On that first day, there's been talk that teams are calling other teams about moving up and this kind of thing. I mean, do you expect that there will be any kind of draft surprises in
Oh
that
yeah.
first round that we're not anticipating?
Absolutely. There's so much talk about a lot of movement. There probably could be a record-setting amount of trades, and I think Miami is one of the teams. Teams are openly talking about we want to move down, we want to get lower in the draft. Miami is one of those teams. They're picking at 13, and they would love to get down because they're basically rebuilding their roster. And in this draft, the talent is in probably picks number 20 through 70. So you want to be in those spots. From what I understand about this draft, there are probably about 10 elite players. Then there's 10 offensive linemen. Then there's about 12 good defensive linemen. And then cornerbacks, you've got probably about 8 elite cornerbacks. And all of those players will be picked from 20 to 70. And so you want to get into that Friday. You want to get into Friday in the second and third round, and you want to have more selections because that's where the meat and potatoes is of this draft.
And real quick, before I get you out of here, you focus a lot on the Dolphins. Again, you're in Miami. You're a columnist for the Miami Herald. So what the Dolphins gonna do in the first round?
They got to build their trenches. They have a finesse reputation. They're not a very tough and physical team. They got to remake their whole offensive line, their whole defensive line. Literally, they have one player, Zach Sealer, who's a legitimate NFL player on their defensive line right now. You kind of need 9 for training camp. So you got to add probably at least 4 or 5 more just before you begin training camp. So I wouldn't be surprised if they select an offensive lineman or defensive lineman either at 13 or move down and then make the selection, and then in day 2 as well. But they also need cornerback, which is Jalen Ramsey's decided he doesn't want to play for the Miami Dolphins anymore, and they're going to be shipping him out of there. So for what, I have no idea, but that's that entitlement era when these elite players say, I don't want to play for you anymore. Exactly what can you do?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, at this point, they have so much of the leverage. As you said, what can you do? Well, listen, my friend, thank you so much for joining me this Wednesday and for providing us with some draft insight. Everybody's going to be watching. I'm so curious as to where Shedeur goes because regardless of where he's drafted, it's just going to be a story either way. So certainly it's shaping up to be the biggest moment of the draft is where this kid goes.
My money's on Pittsburgh, and you know why?
Because I like that fit. I like that fit for him.
They don't bluff. Pittsburgh does not bluff. And they said, we like him. We would take him. And the question is, who wants to get above him? Who wants to get above him to try to get him?
All right. We will see. All right, Omar, take care. And thanks a lot.
No problem.
All right. My friend Omar Kelly joining me to discuss a little bit of the NFL draft. So I'm going to pivot from talking about sports to talking about what I think, if not for Shannon Sharpe, was probably the story of the last week or the story of this past weekend. And that was the blockbuster debut of Ryan Coogler's latest movie, his latest project in collaboration with Michael B. Jordan, who stars in it. And that was Sinners. I went to see Sinners. I saw it on Sunday afternoon, little date day, me and the hubby. And while I was there, some scary shit kind of happened. We are like a good 75% into Sinners, and the screen went black. And all we heard was sound. At first we heard nothing, and then we heard the sound. And I was like, oh, is this part of the experience? They trying to scare the shit out of you for real? Like, I thought it was like immersive. Like, I didn't hear it was immersive. And then what started to settle in my mind is because this is America, and because we have had some unfortunate, deadly, violent incidents, some shootings at movie theaters, I was like, check these exits. Do we see anybody coming in that wasn't here before? And looking at just looking around, and everybody in there, I could tell after a few minutes when the screen didn't come back on that we were all thinking the same thing, like who we got to fight, who we got to jump. Is it time to stop, drop, and roll? Like that whole thing. And luckily, it was just a power surge that knocked the film out. They went back to the place that we were. And so I was able to finish the movie. And for me, it was definitely the best movie I saw this year. Not a horror person, not at all. And I was honestly, when I heard all the high praise that kept rolling in across social media, I thought, this is cap. This movie can't be this good. This is absolute cap. And I should know better than to ever doubt Ryan Coogler and certainly Michael B. Jordan. But joining me right now, I'm so pleased to bring her in. She is the senior entertainment critic, culture critic, I should say, entertainment and culture critic. I don't know exactly how best to describe her because she's such a master at this entertainment game and has been for a long time for ABC and also for ESPN. She has covered Ryan Coogler his whole career and also probably Michael B. Jordan. And what I think is probably the greatest part of her resume, She's also my former college roommate and my best friend, Kelley L. Carter. Thank you for joining me here for this Wednesday. I appreciate it to break down the success of Sinners. Well, let's start there because you know what pissed everybody off over the weekend as the numbers kept coming in about how this was a box office bonanza. Everybody saw what Variety put up. Okay. When Variety says, yeah, it grossed this money, but it's got to make this much money in order for this movie to break even or even getting a little bit ahead. And I have to say, I've honestly been like a little surprised that despite the success that the media framing of Sinners has been a little off. Not your media framing, because you wrote a terrific piece for Anscape about Ryan Coogler, about what this film means for his career. But just address that part of it, because between what Variety wrote and also the anonymous studio executive that said that Ryan Coogler's deal with this movie, where he gets to own it fully after 25 years, was going to quote unquote break Hollywood. What is up with how this movie has been portrayed by the media outside of Kelley L. Carter in the general media sphere?
Yeah, aren't you so sick of having an asterisk attached next to our successes? Because I am. What I thought was interesting about the headlines from New York Times and also from Variety is that they were trying to provide some nuance that we normally never see in box office reporting. So why is it that this one gets that type of nuance? Let's first talk about numbers, which I actually hate talking about, but this film had approximately what we understand, a $90 million production budget. That's just production only. And most people calculate a marketing budget to be about half of what a production budget is. Okay. So in order for this film to in order for it to make its money back, you look at it's now 145, but you have to kind of double that in order to think about what makes this movie like a success. The fact of the matter is that this film is the highest grossing original IP film since 2019. And just to explain, and I hope I'm not dumbing down the conversation, but normally when we get movies that by the time we get to the big screen, they're usually like film adaptations, maybe something that we plucked from Broadway and translated, maybe something from a video game. We're seeing that now be huge, or sequels, franchises, comic books. It comes from some other source material. But with this film, this is all original. It is really difficult to get an original film made in Hollywood. So Ryan Coogler, firstly, has done what feels almost impossible. Everything that he's done before, and you may not have thought about it like this, it comes from some type of source material, whether it was the Rocky franchise, the horrific thing that happened with Oscar Grant, or the Marvel universe. Even when he produced Judas and the Black Messiah, obviously based off of a true story, this is from his own imagination. And it is absolutely a success. You look at what it did this opening weekend, it grossed like, I think, almost $65 million. And then you have to add another, I think 45 million it did overseas. So I think there's something like at 125 million after the weekend. And then you look at what happened on Monday and Tuesday. These were unprecedented box office numbers. Like nobody goes to see a movie on a Tuesday. Usually movie theaters discount the tickets. And the fact that it almost grabbed like almost another $10 million on Tuesday with discounted tickets means that a lot more people went to the movie theater than normally go to the movie theater. And we're not even in the summer yet. We're not out of April, but by the time we get to the end of April, this will probably be the most successful film to ever open in April. And we didn't have a frame of reference going into it. This is an incredible accomplishment. This is a huge success and something that we've probably never seen done. And what I thought was interesting, focusing on the deal that he made, where he gets to own the film outright after 25 years. This is not unprecedented. It's not something that we've seen before. Quentin Tarantino had the same deal with Once Upon a Time of Hollywood. The difference is that he gets to own his film after 30 years. And that was a deal that he had grandfathered in when he was with Miramax. But nobody had anything to say when his number, which, grossed about the same, had a very similar budget, had those same kind of early numbers, and ultimately did okay, by the time they got to the end of it. So why that conversation around this film in particular? The truth of the matter is that I think we know why that conversation is around this film in particular.
Yeah,
as a Black filmmaker.
I mean, I think that's how I certainly read it, and especially as more people kept pulling their receipts on who you just alluded to, Quentin Tarantino, that he got a similar deal, and that was considered to be a coup. No one cared. It certainly didn't get the energy that this film actually received. Now, you're somebody, as I mentioned before, that like you have, you've covered the scope of Ryan Coogler's career, and you understand how he thinks as a filmmaker. You know the breadth of his career. A lot of people have said that this is his best movie that he's ever done. Mm-hmm. So, Miss Expert, do you think that Sinners is his best work ever?
That's such a heady sentence, I think, but I'm going to go out and say I do think that Sinners is his best film ever. And that's saying a lot, because when I look at the original Black Panther, what he was able to do with that film and the franchise and the studio is he elevated what our expectations are when it comes to comic book adaptations. Before Panther, Marvel as a studio had never gotten an Oscar nomination, had never gotten any type of award citations. This was the first time this happened. And then he did it again with Wakanda 2, with Angela Bassett's, Oscar nomination. And these are things that no one was thinking about. These were films that people went to go make a lot of money and do. They weren't places where you are taking your Juilliard training and leaving it, on the silver screen. But he changed all of that. You've noticed, I'm sure, a difference in the quality and caliber of scripts that have been coming from the Marvel films ever since Panther. It really changed the game. And he also, and this is my favorite thing that he was able to do, is he disproved a long-held racist, Hollywood-driven stereotype that Black-centered movies cannot travel across seas, because really that's where the money is made, in the international market. And he destroyed that with Panther, because it was the quickest film to get to $1 billion. And it's one of Marvel's most successful films ever, and thusly one of the most successful films ever done, according to the box office. And so that's a huge thing. And Ryan did that. And yet, and still, I think Sinners is probably his best film. It's certainly his best reviewed film, but I mean, the writing is incredible. The acting is tremendous. I mean, Michael B. Jordan, and I love Mike. We all love Mike, right? But right. I don't know that we've been able to give him a role, or in this case, 2 roles, that really allowed him to play to all of the colors, that really allowed him to show range. And this role in particular really allows him to be seen as more than, a Hollywood pretty boy. You know what I mean? And I certainly don't say that in any disrespectful way, because he's one of my favorite, people, and certainly one of my favorite actors. I mean, I think back early in his career, that closing scene that he had in The Wire, until we get to Sinners, to me, that was probably one of his best pieces. And that stays with me. I thought that was so beautiful, well done. It makes me want to cry just thinking about it right now. But Sinners, he just came and blew me away. I first saw that film on the lot of Warner Brothers a while ago. And when I came back, I sent him a message, and I was basically like, I'm gonna fight you. What did I just see? Because I'm like, let's, he sent me like a bunch of like laughing, crying, laughing emojis. He's like, I can't wait to hear what you think about it. I said, you want to hear right now what I think about this movie. Like, this film is incredible. And this is not my genre of film whatsoever. This is not a film that I would ever sign up to watch. I do not like horror movies, but Jordan Peele has done a thing where he has invited Black people to the party of these very well done films, original films, because that was the film that came out in 2019 that people are comparing the success box office wise and say original film. And it's Get Out by Jordan Peele. And he really, won an Oscar for writing that film, but he really invited Black folks to the party and said, guess what? We don't have to die before the opening credits roll. And there is space here to create these dynamic stories in ways that we've never been able to tell, because we've never allowed the culture to be present in these films. And I just thought the film was well written, well executed. And I love that he was able to, probably by way of the deal that he made, maintain all the integrity of this film. Yeah. He didn't have to, go in a different direction because an executive said so. They trusted him, and I'm glad that they did, because look at what's happening with Sinners.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's where he is different, and what separates him from other directors is that he's able to turn his movies into a cultural experience. And, I certainly did not know this. I didn't know that there was a history of the Chinese being in the Delta, in the Deep South. Like, I had no idea until this film, and I saw other people posting a documentary that was done about them creating their own roots and community, or being in community and allyship with Black folks in the Deep South, in a place that you never thought that you would see this community. I just want to say real quick before I answer this next question. If you haven't seen it, this is about to be a spoiler alert. So if you got to mute it real quick or whatever, all I know is, I mean, there's so many things you get left with from this movie, so many scenes, especially the one where Preacher Boy and he's singing, and it takes us through a musical history about the blues being the basis. Like, that's one of the most beautiful scenes I've ever seen in any movie.
Yeah.
But it's just going to never ever leave me. I don't think I've still recovered from Haley Steinfeld saying, "You robbed these banks, but are you gonna steal this? You know what tonight?" And I was like, the way I wasn't prepared, the way I had to clutch my pearls, I was just like, Miss Haley, I'm sorry.
I wasn't expecting any of it. Well, first off, that scene that you talk about, I was so blown away by it too, because one thing that I talked with Ryan about is I was like, the thing that was unexpected to me to find inside of this movie is really this lesson on cultural appropriation. And he was like, it's interesting. He's like, because I didn't necessarily look at it as cultural appropriation, but I looked at it as like genre interrogation is actually what he said, genre interrogation. And he's like, the reason why is because, and it's true, he said, in music in particular, like a Black person can sing a song and it's defined one way, and then a white person can sing a song and it's defined a completely different way. We're both from Detroit, so we know that to be true. We can look at a various amount. I mean, one of the kind of biggest songs that really kind of soundtracks like the rock folk scene is Piece of My Heart, Janis Joplin. Those of us from Detroit know that Irma Franklin, Aretha Franklin's sister, recorded that song first. And Janis basically did like a note for note rendering of what Irma did. When Irma did it, and this was when music was very, very racially segregated. It still is right now. We just don't call it race music anymore. But that was a race song when Irma Franklin did it. When Janis did it, it was a rock song. We can do the same thing with the Shirelles and the Beatles. We can do this all day. And what Ryan says is that this not only exists in music, but it exists in the film industry too. And he wanted to make an incredible hell of a point, and he did, in the middle of a vampire movie that's stuck in Reconstruction, desegregated. So I said, so we sharecropping, we're vampires, we're like, it's a lot going on.
Right.
And it's so beautiful and so delicious. Yeah. It's so good.
No, it is. It's so many outstanding performances. We'd be here another hour just kind of going through like who showed their entire ass in this film, because it was a lot of people. But I agree with something you said earlier. Michael B. Jordan, I think, I mean, there's nothing wrong with being a good looking man in Hollywood for sure, but I do think him in this role is very different than anything he's ever played. And it just shows his range, his versatility. I saw a comment on social media where somebody, I think they sent a comment to him and they said, "Hey, is it possible that you could get nominated for both Best Actor and Best Supporting Actor since you're playing twins?"
The same role.
Right, for the same role. Because by the way, I had no idea he was playing twins in this. Like, I didn't even know that. So I was like, wait, why is it two of them? Okay, yeah. I see how this is. And naturally, of course, because we've seen Ryan and Michael B. Jordan collaborate on so many movies, that is naturally drawing comparisons to Denzel and Spike Lee. And so people are wondering now, especially those who have seen this one, which duo is better? I mean, I know that feels like sort of unfair to kind of compare it to, given how long that Spike Lee and Denzel have been working together. But what would you say to those who are wondering, is this Michael B. Jordan, Ryan Coogler, as good, or at least are they in their ballpark or range of being like one of the better director actor collaborations we've ever seen?
It's like asking a parent who your favorite child is. They may have an answer to that, so maybe not. But you know what? I mean, this is what I will say is, I mean, Spike Lee is so foundational for me. I don't know that I would be doing this work that I'm doing if it weren't for creations that Spike Lee came up with. I still remember my parents taking me to go see School Days. They should not have taken me to go see School Days because I was way too young to see it. But I remember,
Dang, okay.
I know, right? And I saw it in the movie theater. And, my dad, as you know, Jemele, went to an HBCU and is a member of the Divine Nine. And so I grew up in the culture of going back to homecoming. And that was the first time that I saw my culture reflected on a 50-foot screen. Before then, it was Annie, it was Grease, and I was loving all of that all of that. I love all, as you know, I love all the musicals, but seeing School Days, I was like, oh, that's Auntie Wanda and her crew. That's so and it was just like, it was a different experience for me. And at some point down the line, I was like, this is what I want to do. So just to give that context, I say all what I'm about to say next to this. Spike and Denzel, very foundational for me and for a lot of us, right? I mean, Malcolm X is one of my all-time favorite movies. I mean, that performance is chef's kiss, is perfect. But I think that, Ryan and Mike are like this, they're this millennial version of them, and they can only run because those two walk. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's hard, I think, to separate and say one is better than the other because, Ryan is getting opportunities to do things that Spike Lee, when he was a young filmmaker, was not getting the opportunity to do. Ryan now can pretty much write his ticket about what he wants to do and where he wants to do it next. There is a line of people who want to work with Ryan. That deal that Ryan made, by the way, that was not the only studio that offered him that deal. Everybody wanted Sinners. It was up for a bidding war. Everyone wanted this movie. They clearly had the smart vision to know it was going to do something, that it was going to at least be in a conversation, if not do the financial work that it's doing in the box office. Because at the end of the day, that's really the only color that matters, right? In Hollywood, right. Screen. But I mean, I'm so inspired by what Ryan does as a writer. And I'm so excited to see what else he's going to do, because you look, and same with Michael too, because you look at Denzel, like he turned 70 in December and everyone was like, are you going to retire? And he's like, yeah, I'm going to retire, but I'm going to do it. And then he laid out 10 years worth of work. So now we're looking at a reality where we're still seeing Denzel work in front of the camera at 80 years old and then going behind the camera, probably exclusively, according to him, in his 80s. Michael B. Jordan's in his 30s. So that means we have another 50 years of this. And same with Ryan, another 50 years of him, actively giving us, culture and giving us cinema. I mean, sign me up for that. I'm here for that. And I feel like a lot of those filmmakers, Spike and Denzel said it in this really great documentary that's currently on Apple TV. When he saw Black Panther, he was like, it's in good hands. Like, I'm really happy about the future of filmmaking, especially from a Black lens, after seeing what Ryan Coogler can do. And I think everybody in the culture and in the community feels that way.
As somebody who, you've gone to several Oscars, still a member of the Hollywood Foreign Press Association. Okay. So you get to vote on a lot of awards. When it comes down to the Academy Awards, you've heard, because this is an original piece, I know we have to basically wait until next year, and I'm not sure how these award season runs or like how this thing works, but do you expect Sinners to be up for some major awards?
I think it's made a strong case to be in conversation. Okay. That's also, I think, where some of that marketing budget comes from, because I know people heard $45 million. $45 million. That's a lot of money, and it is a lot of money. But what happens is, and you know this, especially now that you live here in Los Angeles, there are a lot of FYC events, like for your consideration events. Right. Those billboards cost money. Sitting what's going to happen after this, long after this film goes out of theaters, and even after it hits streaming, there are going to be a lot of screenings with voters, with people, a lot of Q&As, a lot of people like myself interviewing Ryan Coogler and Michael B. Jordan and cast, talking about this film. There's going to be a lot of activation once we get into the fourth quarter of this year to remind people that earlier in the year, there was this really great film that everyone was talking about. I remember when Get Out dropped, and it dropped in the spring as well. When it came out in 2019, I was like, this film is so good, but why are they releasing it now? Because normally the best films of the year get released after September 1st.
So that was going to be my other question, is like, why didn't they release Sinners later?
I mean, I don't honestly have an answer to why this came later, because a film this good normally would not come out in April, but a film as good as Get Out normally would not come out in the spring either. But what happens is he has a longer runway, I think, to make a case for why this is one of the best films of 2025. We still have a lot of films to come out. There's some films that I know, are coming out this year that I have not seen yet, that I can't wait to see. Some films I have seen, and I can tell you right now, The Sinners is still the best film of the year in 2025. But a lot of the bulk of the films that I think people like myself, voters and critics, are looking for is going to come out later this year. But they're going to have to make sure the conversation does not end with at Sinners. You know what I mean? They're gonna, and what is helpful is that Michael B. Jordan is such a big name in Hollywood that I don't think people are going to forget about it. And I think importantly, Delroy Lindo,
he was phenomenal in this.
Honestly, it's too early to say should he probably that'll probably get a nomination, because I'm pretty good at prognosticating these things.
You are.
It still is too early to say that, but I would love to see Delroy Lindo get a nomination. I think that this community feels like they have denied Delroy Lindo in the past for nominating him in the supporting role, and I think that this voting body likes to right its wrong. So I can see a reality where by the time we get to October, November, December, you're going to see Delroy Lindo on a bunch of Variety, Vanity Fair-esque cover stories, doing actor-on-actor interviews, reminding people of how great his performance was in Sinners and how he didn't get, recognized for Archie and Malcolm X, what I'm saying? Or some of these other roles. I think The Five Bloods was another role that came out a couple of years ago, a Spike Lee film, that people thought he was a shoo-in to get a nomination for, and he didn't. So, I mean, I think this could be a great year for him. And then Miles, this new kid that Ryan found out of nowhere.
He is exceptional in this role. And I was unaware of his family lineage in terms of singing. Right. I was unaware that, his mom's a gospel singer, but he is absolutely incredible in this. And this is his first major film, right? First film.
Yeah. First anything.
Yeah.
It's so great. It's so great. Ryan has such an incredible eye for talent, and it shows, and I don't think that this is the fifth film he has done with Mike. I don't think this is the last. I think that, I asked him, I said, at this point, when you were sitting down and writing things, are you thinking about, Mike, are you thinking about him? And I mean, the answer is kind of yes. He thought with this film, this is probably the last time he will be able to get Michael to do a dual role in this way, because it does require a lot out of an actor to essentially play, two characters in a film such as this. But I mean, I think that they just have this, magical 1-2 punch, and they know how good they are when they show up. I mean, he's been the lead in every film he's done with the exception of Black Panther, but I feel like I can make a really strong case for, even though even though Michael B. Jordan was not Black Panther, he was Killmonger, which most people it's not they look at Killmonger and Black Panther as double leads necessarily, but that character was so colossal and pivotal to the film that it almost felt like he was a little bit bigger than a supporting character in that film.
It did. It definitely did. And one question, and I don't know if you've ever asked Ryan Coogler, since you have interviewed him so frequently, I wonder if he had it to do over again, would he have killed Killmonger? I just wonder that.
I mean, my argument was that Killmonger never died, right? Because we didn't see him die. And I feel like in comic books, especially in comic book adaptations, and in superhero films, whatever, if you don't see the person die, there's always room for them to come back. It's kind of like a soap opera in that. And unless you see them fall down the elevator shaft, like Remore, they're coming back. You don't know reference, you don't watch films, or you don't watch Friends, but they're coming back. You know what I mean? And so I just always imagined a world where he would come back. And obviously, as we saw in the second film, he did come back.
He did come back. Yeah.
Okay, so I guess he did die, but I refuse to believe that Killmonger was dead. And what I will say, because I think this is why you're asking the question, is the studio did not know how strongly Black Americans specifically would connect and resonate with Eric Killmonger. They did not count on all of us being like, that's who I would be.
You're right.
Bring it back to Oakland, bring it to Detroit, bring it to Newark. They didn't understand that we would naturally have that connection. So at the premiere, when everyone is applauding Killmonger, which normally you don't kind of get that response from someone who's an evildoer in a film, I think Bob Iger was like, no one has seen this film, but why are people? But everyone was so into it because that character was he felt like a cousin. We all kind of knew Eric because we all kind of thought we would be Eric.
And I think historically, it reminded people a little bit of Martin versus Malcolm, as in Martin Luther King Jr. versus Malcolm X, and people making the sort of comparison to the fact that you had one about peaceful nonviolence and building a world for everyone, and you had the other one, at least for a time in his life, who was awesome, by any means necessary, right? And so because of the very different approaches, I think that's why also a lot of our people certainly connected to that. Before I let you go, though, I would be remiss if I didn't mention another part that I loved about Sinners, and many people have made note about this, is for Michael B. Jordan's love interest, or I should say one of his love interests in this, since he's playing two different characters, for that to be a dark-skinned, full-figure Black woman, I thought was a hell of a statement to make.
We have been here. Yeah.
It was really, visually, and not only just have her as a love interest, but they're intimate with one another in this movie. And it's like, that to me was one of those message, but subtle messages. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it was one of those nuanced, incredible things. I think that nothing that Ryan Coogler does is unintentional. You know what I mean? Down to casting choices. I'm sure, and I have not read the script. At some point I probably will, because I'm so curious to see what was on the page. But I mean, I would imagine that she was probably written that way. I don't think that it was that he necessarily saw, that actress audition and said, oh my God, I've got to have her, even though she wasn't what I envisioned. My guess is that he probably always saw that character looking how she looked, because that's what we look like. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
In a lot of places, you know what I'm saying? But yeah.
Yeah, no, I thought that was great. Well, anyway, thank you, friend, for joining me and breaking down what this all means. I just think that this movie is going to make a ton of money, and everybody is going to keep on ratioing Variety, because then they came back talk about how great the movie was doing. They changed their headline up quick. So the internet, and shout out to Ben Stiller and Patrick Schwarzenegger, like they got Variety all the way together. Right?
And I want to say this because I have a really good friend who is Black Puerto Rican who works at Variety, Clay Davis. He does an incredible job as a reporter there. I have not talked with him, about kind of any of the heat or anything, in fact, that has happened. But I would imagine to say, as there are people in the newsroom, I'm sure, that raise some voices too, which is why it's important for us to be inside in newsrooms especially when things like this happen. So yeah.
I'm sure it was many of Black folks that was like, "Now you say it." You know what I'm saying? I was like, I definitely could see some checking going on in that Slack chat or whatever.
For sure. For sure.
1,000%. Anyway, you all can check out Kelley on ABC, also on ESPN. And from time to time, even though your background and foundation is in writing, every now and again, she'll bless us with the written word. So I appreciate you, friend.
Thank you. I love to do it anytime. And just remember in your mind, 270. Once that film hits that $270 million, it's all Gucci.
Ooh,
ain't nobody got nothing to say.
That's right. All right. Take care, Kelley. Thank you. All right. Always good to be joined by my friend Kelley L. Carter, who covers Hollywood and has been covering Hollywood her entire career. So, and all of you who have had so many wonderful thoughts in the chat, if you haven't seen Sinners, I just cannot, again, encourage you enough to see this movie. I mean, it really is what I call shape-shifting. And these days when you go to the movies, you kind of don't expect that experience. And I know that certainly the pandemic, a lot of us don't enjoy going to movies, but this is one of the few that have come out in the last couple of years where I would say you absolutely have to go see this in a theater, and preferably in IMAX, because this is something that is meant to be seen in IMAX as well. I didn't get a chance to see it in IMAX because the other difficult part, depending on where you live, every theater does not have IMAX, right? And so I wanted to see this movie so badly that I didn't want to wait till Monday, because there was a neighborhood theater. They were showing it on Monday and it was Sunday. I was like, no, I want to see this today. So I just saw it in XD, but that gives me a great excuse to go back and see this movie in IMAX. Now, before I close it out, I told you I was going to get back to this Shannon Sharpe thing, because I had to kind of move and was pressed for time because I wanted to make sure that we got in some draft talk. And of course, got in some discussion about centers, since that was also the big kind of story of the weekend. Again, like I'm not guilt or innocence. I have no idea. That's not my place to say what that is. But what I do know is that for somebody who's at this stage in their career, this has got to be, hugely embarrassing for him. And that's not to say that people should feel sorry for him. I know a lot of people have had a lot to say about, if you're his age and you have what he has and you have what he has to lose, why are you moving in this particular manner that appears to be reckless? I think those are probably fair criticisms. And even in a world where we see a lot of things, we see people often wind up in, situations and often get caught off guard or are often targeted, or however you want to put that. I just think that, at this point, for him, for this to happen now, as he has gotten to this pinnacle in sports media, where you're looking at, just sort of a current Mount Rushmore, not like throughout history. It's like you have him, you have Stephen A. And it's so few of us in particular that get to these spaces and get to this perceived mountaintop where you are, a face. And he did it differently because he was able to do this kind of building his own thing. Like First Take is just kind of an add-on to what he's been able to build with Club Shay Shay. And to see all of this in a matter of days just kind of be in a very precarious place has just been fascinating to watch. And, as I started to say earlier, just looking at this from just purely an ESPN perspective, I mean, my feel about this is that, there's been a report that Shannon is about to ink or, on the verge in some stage of perhaps inking like $100 million deal that has to do with the podcast he's created, not just Club Shay Shay, but also Nightcap that he has with Ocho Cinco. And certainly everybody noticed the timing, like lawsuit drops. There's a report that there's an $100 million payday that could be on the way. Suddenly lawsuit drops. And then, we're sort of off to the races. And so, yeah, that timing, definitely, I think it was done on purpose. And what I would say is, if you're ESPN and you were able to get Shannon away from an incredibly popular show and a popular dynamic with Skip Bayless, get him to your network, add on to the success of First Take, I think they're much more conservative. Yes, you have Pat McAfee that's on there now, and he gets to cuss and he does some wild shit too, talking about, I just saw some of the clips where they had Paul Heyman on, and they talking about how high Patrick or how high Pat McAfee was getting. They was getting high together or whatever, smoking weed. And, sometimes I watch and see these clips and I'm like, boy, things really done changed up in there. I remember not too long ago on First Take, Mad Dog, the New York sports radio personality, was talking about how he'd be taking edibles, making him a little cocktail, and then he started sports gambling. Said this on air, and I was like, wow, it sure has changed up in ESPN, which I think generally speaking is for the good, because we live in a different media age now. People's sensibilities are different. People gravitate towards authenticity. They they want to know about these types of things from the people that are delivering, sports commentary, the news, all that kind of stuff. And so, yeah, I mean, so it's a different age in general. And so some might be led to believe, because it is a different age at ESPN, that this is the type of, for lack of a better way to put it, scandal that the network might be willing to tolerate because they're in a different place. I personally, and I could be dead wrong, and I have talked to nobody at ESPN, but just my sense about what I know about the company, what I know about the folks that are in charge, is that I personally expect them to sit Shannon down. I don't think it'll be a formal suspension, as in he'll lose money. I think it would be one of those things where they just kind of put him on ice for a few weeks or however long that they feel comfortable that the process has played out to a point where they can make a decision, because realize he's only doing First Take a couple of days a week. Right. And so because of that, while he has been obviously additive to the show, I don't think that he's been so additive, and that could go for a lot of people. So I'm certainly not, picking on him. He's not so additive that he can't also be dismissed, and that he also, won't come back. And I'm not wishing that on him, but it's just like kind of the realities when you're in corporate media is the court of public opinion does mean something to them. And they also have to think in terms of liability for themselves. Like if there's any truth to any of this, and you have a corporate environment where you're working around other women and other people, and any of those women say that they don't feel comfortable working with him, well, that's going to create another issue. So then you have to ask yourself, like, is this worth it? Is the juice worth the squeeze, as they say? And so there's going to be, I'm sure, and Stephen A. in his comments already alluded to the fact that there's some very hard conversations that they're already having, and they're fully aware of the situation, about this. And so my expectation is that he, next week, I think he normally does First Take, like I think Mondays and Tuesdays, something like that. I fully expect that this will be a situation where we might not see him for a little bit. I could be wrong, but that's my expectation. I want to quickly get to a couple of your comments. A lot of you have a lot to say. This from ES13. Just curious, why do people react negatively to older men dating younger women, even if they are of legal age? Not defending Shannon, but just want to know your thoughts. Okay, well, here are my thoughts. Legal, yes. Is it a good look? No. And I think there is a difference between, say, let's just say this young lady was 35. Shannon, I believe, is in his mid 50s. And let's just say it was one of those things where it was 56 and 35. I don't think anybody blinks. But when you say 19 carries a different connotation. That means, you just are barely legal to vote. You can't even buy a drink yet legally. Okay. And that's a big age difference. Going younger is one thing. Going that young, and then you combine that with, something Shannon disclosed, is that somebody who's on OnlyFans. I'm not judging, but I'm just saying 19 years old, OnlyFans. What else needs to be said? Right? And so, if you know any 19-year-olds, especially 19-year-old, women, it's like, yeah, you're 19, but you're still a teen is the word. So I think for a lot of people, even myself, that was a little disarming. Like, oh, okay, that's kind of young. And I will say this is that at least women that are in the position that Shannon is in, you just don't see that. Now, I know personally, of some friends of mine, or I'll say associates, people I'm cool with. I'll just put it under the banner of people I'm cool with, right? Who have dated younger. But have they dated beneath drinking age younger? No, I'm not saying that it never happens, but as most women know, older women definitely will date younger. I know there was a whole conversation about Tracy Ellis Ross, and when she had her comment that she dated younger, she never said how young. She just said she dated younger men and men not in her age bracket, because she felt like there's a certain toxic energy there that she doesn't get when she dates somebody younger. Now I'm married, so I'm way out the game, right? But I say when I was in the game and I was dating younger men, no, that was not my thing. And that was no disrespect to them. It's just, especially of a certain age, it's like, well, what we got to talk about? We don't even get the same references, right? And so a lot of women tend to usually date a little older, or, kind of date in our age group, because as you all know, that financial stability is important. And the one thing that 20-something-year-olds don't have is that, by and large. So if that is the case, that is why the conversations are different. But they're not that much different, because, Drea, who has a child with Jalen Green, who's on the Houston Rockets. I'll use her as an example. Drea got drug, because I believe Jalen Green is the same age as her son, and she got drug. There was like nothing. And it's just like, okay, that's her business. I ain't got nothing to do with that. That's how her household or whatever. But I do think a lot of people do look at that kind of thing, even with women, and judge it, to say like, what you supposed to do Like, what y'all talking about? What's the conversation? I've had this same thought about Bill Belichick. I swear, Bill Belichick is in his 70s. And I'm like, bro, what you and this 20-year-old talking about? I would love to know what the conversations are. What's the reference points? You know, what are the pop culture references that y'all have in common? I'd love to know what this is. You know, he's just like, what? What are we talking about? So there's a lot of judgment that's happening there. And, you know, if there was one part of this, I'm already immediately judging. And again, they put us in the group chat. We didn't ask to be in this group chat. They put us into this. But I think a lot of us have, you know, just have been a little alarmed by the racialized tone of which these text messages that have been revealed and these audios have taken place. And there's a list of like uncomfortable things about this that have me like, oh, okay. That is probably at the top of the list. Because at the end of the day, I didn't ask to get in on anybody's Jim Crow games. I did not ask for this. I did not ask for anything. It's just like, so when you know, the fact that Big Black Baby was trending, and look, I'm not here to judge your kink, but in this case, I was judging your kink because these are things I did not willingly want to know about. But it just seemed real racial. It just felt real pre-Reconstruction to me. And that was like, that was wild. That's like that's the best thing I can I can put on that. And so that is the other kind of part about all of this is like, you know, we are finding out a lot of information about two people that we did not ask for. And so that in itself has been a lot to absorb. That's for sure. And so I'm just like, nah, man, I didn't ask for the Miss Ann porn. I did not ask for that at all. Like not at all. So yeah. But anyway, as I get on out of here, I want to thank you guys for continuing to support. I really appreciate the fact that y'all joined me for this Wednesday. I'll be back next Wednesday. As I said, I'm going to be adding more days, doing more lives. And you know, I really thank you all for rocking with me as I figure out the kinks of this and you know, just what my overall vision for it is. So again, before you get out of here, make sure that you subscribe, continue to come on back for WTH Wednesdays, and I will see you all next week. Take care.